नदी अर्धंगाय शिवस्य विश्वनिधये मूलं प्रकृते नमः. My pranams to all. Today, the second day of this conference, this is the first session, and we feel privileged. Our first session speaker, Dr. Nandita Sen, MBBS, Director Students Affairs, Kalinga Institute of Medical Science, Bhubaneswar, had served the Indian Army Medical Corps as a commanding officer, commissioned officer, a qualified hospital administrator. She has been faculty in prestigious naval institutions of the services, including Merchant Navy Training Center at Mumbai and medical superintendent of large super specialty tertiary care hospital at Coimbatore, a philanthropist and a key member of project management team of welfare of ex-servicemen and their families. She is a PhD in classical Odissi dance and a disciple of Guru Sri Kelusarana Mahapatra Padma Vibhushana in 2000. So now I am requesting Swamini Atma Pragyananda Saraswati ji to please honor our today's speaker, Dr. Nandita Sen.
So, a very good morning to all of you. I thank the organization for inviting me today, and mostly my dear friend Swamini Pragyananda Saraswati, a friend of 50 years. So, I am thrilled to be here and contribute to whatever she is trying to achieve as an individual. Thank you so much. So, it's not a deliberation, it is more a plea for the girl child. So the topic of today is woman empowerment. And since tomorrow is International Women's Day, this holds a great significance in the march of a woman towards achieving her rights in this society. Okay, so we start the first. Now, woman empowerment is a continuous process. I repeat, a continuous process that empowers women to control their own lives in society and their communities at large. This entails improving their social, educational, economic, political, and legal strength, ensuring equal rights to women. Swami Vivekananda ji said, the best thermometer to the progress of a nation is the treatment of its women. Manu, the great lawmaker, he said, where women are honored, there reside the gods. And our very own Swami Dayanand Saraswati ji advocated equal rights and respect to women and education of children, irrespective of gender. Indian culture attaches much importance to women. India is symbolized as Mother India, keeping in view the exemplary qualities of a woman, namely patience and endurance, love and care, sympathy and overall generosity. There is a proverb that says, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And she is a woman. She is strength. She is Shakti. She is Janani, a mother, a procreator. But where is she today? Sadly, this is not the status of women today. We have passed through several phases of civilization, but she continues to be discriminated against. And there are several reasons. Would we attribute this to her natural, delicate physical form, the weaker sex, or her limitations of being born a girl child and not revered and celebrated as a boy? Would it be her physical limitations like the menstrual cycles, the vagaries of childbirth, emotional issues with menopause? Or would it be her status as a girl child in a society where she is considered inferior to a boy? She is also considered a burden, as eventually she has to leave the parental home and be married off with a hefty dowry. The educational inequalities, like parents are reluctant to educate her as compared to the sons, as she would in any case leave the parental home and not be able to subscribe to her parents' combined income, and hence Paraya Dhan. And in some extreme cases, in places of India, she is cruelly eliminated from the world, female feticide, resulting in a complete distortion of the male-female ratio. Keeping all these factors in mind, we now consider all the barriers to women empowerment. Most of the barriers to women empowerment and equity lie ingrained in the cultural laws of the land. Many women feel this pressure. Some get accustomed to be treated inferior to men, both at home by their husbands and in the society at large. Or is it the educational inequality? The right to education is the fundamental right of every citizen of India. She is deprived that. We still see boys being sent to school in preference to girls. Or is it the gender inequality? Women are deprived of equal rights and status in comparison to men, both at home and the workplace, across any socio-political atmosphere, be it politics, law, defense services, public sector and private sector jobs. Then the economic inequality. There is a distinct difference in pay structure between women and men, both in the rural and the urban sector. Man, a village wage earner, a daily wage earner in the village, man would be getting around rupees 650 a day, whereas a woman for the same duration of work would be paid around say 400 to 450 rupees a day. In the urban, private and public sector, men draw a higher salary than women for the same job profile. Even in the entertainment industry, the hero is paid much more than the heroine of a film for the same film. So even today, women the world over are fighting for pay parity across all job descriptions. Then there is the sexual discrimination, a deep-rooted social ill in our world, stemming from the continuous discrimination of a woman from her birth to adulthood. And being a girl child is her only undoing. Before birth, many female fetuses are medically terminated after a sex determination test. After birth, many a girl infant is smothered, killed by the parents themselves. As a young girl, she is discriminated against multiple fronts, whether it is literacy or that she is a burden due to the payment of a heavy dowry, whether she is easily pushed into trafficking or child labor, at times even sold by her own parents. As a young woman, she is raped, brutalized, and killed because she is not trained in the art of self-defense. After marriage, at the home front, she is subjected to domestic violence by none other than her husband and the in-laws. The list is endless. Keeping in mind all these disadvantages, let me take you through a quick walk about the status of women through the ages. So, the ancient times, the medieval times, and the modern era. Ancient India, or the Vedic ages. Ancient Indian history is replete with examples of women who were empowered. They enjoyed equal status as men. They were educated. They were trained in the martial arts and weaponry, went to battle voluntarily, and they were respected and honored and recognized by the term Janani, the one who gives birth, the mother. They were considered partners and soulmates to their husbands, Ardhangini. Women had the freedom in those days to choose their own husbands. We are familiar with the concept of Swayamvara, where a woman chooses her husband from amongst several suitors. Example, Sita choosing Rama after the latter successfully lifted the Shiv Dhanush and twined it. In war, there is a glowing example of warrior queen Vishpalla, mentioned in the Rig Veda, who went into battle, lost her leg in battle, and went back to battle after she was fixed with a iron leg. In the field of education, 7th and 8th century, corroborated by Yajnavalkya. He welcomed the participation of women in Vedic studies. Yajnavalkya was a Vedic scholar and philosopher who coined the word Advaita, a Vedantic doctrine that identifies the individual self, Atma, with the ground reality. He had two wives, Katyayani and Maitri. Maitri had an intense interest in metaphysics, which led her to become a scholar in metaphysics. She often involved herself in theological dialogues with her husband. In fact, Yajnavalkya dedicated his most philosophical works to two women, Gargi and Maitri, mentioned in the Upanishads. Status of women in the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages saw a deterioration in the status of women. There was an influx of foreign invasions, followed by the Islamic invasions of Babur and the Mughal emperors. Society demanded the protection of women from them, and this led to the practices of Parda, wherein a woman covered her face with a veil to hide her identity. Child marriages. Girls were married off early to guarantee their protection by their husbands. Sati, wherein the woman either willingly or by the societal diktats was forced to burn on the husband's funeral pyre. Jauhar, where women en masse gloriously burned themselves on huge pyres when their husbands went to battle. All the above factors led to further subjugation of the woman's identity. Then came movements like Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism, which propagated the education of women, even to the extent of them participating in their religious orders and congregational singing of bhajans and kirtans. Most of the Sikh gurus too preached inclusion and fought against the discrimination of women. Later on, the status of women during the British period. For a long period, the English East India Company remained indifferent to female education in India. They did not recognize the promotion of any kind of favor to women. Gradually, however, changes did occur and a new era of development started. The Christian missionaries made earnest efforts for the spread of female education in India. So, Western education concepts were responsible for the new pattern of thinking leading to liberalism and rationalism. They even brought about an awakening in the Indian society to fight the social ills existing within our social institutions. Simultaneously, Raja Ram Mohan Roy advocated the abolition of sati. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, an Indian educator and reformist, worked relentlessly towards the acceptance of Hindu widow remarriage. Swami Dayanand Saraswati ji worked towards encouraging women's education, launched programs to support widow remarriage in the 1880s, underlined the importance of educating the girl child, and opposed child marriage. The earliest women's organization for social reforms was founded by Dr. Annie Besant in Madras in 1970. In summation, 19th century India witnessed the rise of women's education and passing of important social legislations in order to improve the lot of women in India. The Hindu Widows Remarriage Act in 1856, Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929, Hindu Women's Right to Property Act 1937, and Abolition of Sati Act passed in 1892. Recounting some empowered women in the Middle Ages, you all must have heard of Razia Sultan, the only woman monarch to have ruled for 15 years before she lost her life in battle with Asaf Khan. He was the general in Emperor Akbar's army. Noor Jahan, Jahangir's wife, effectively wielded imperial power and was the real force behind the imperial throne. Shivaji's mother, Jijabai, was deputed the Queen Regent because of her abilities as a woman and an administrator. Queen of Jhansi, Rani Lakshmi Bai, had an army of 5,000 men, and she added a regiment of women. An excellent horse rider and warrior, she trained the men and women of her army herself. Now in the south, the rise of the Bhakti movement tried to restore the status of Indian women and question some of the forms of oppression. Mirabai, a female saint poetess, was one of the most vocal and important figures of the Bhakti movement, which openly advocated social justice and equality among men and women. Status of women during the freedom struggle. During the freedom struggle, it was recognized that economic development must include women. Mahatma Gandhi and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose encouraged women to actively participate in the freedom movement. And to name a few, Dr. Aruna Asaf Ali, known as the Grand Old Lady of the independent movement, was best known for hoisting the Indian flag at the Gowalia Tank Maidan in Bombay during the Quit India movement. She also took part in the Salt Satyagraha. Bhikaji Kama, an eminent personality of the Indian nationalist movement, was a well-known freedom fighter. She emphasized on equality between men and women and traveled to Germany in 1907 to hoist the Indian flag there. Captain Lakshmi Sehgal, former Indian Army officer, she picked up a gun for the Indian National Army, founded by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and led it like a tigress in the freedom struggle. Kamala Das Chattopadhyay, a social reformer, she played a stellar role in India's fight for independence. She was the first woman from India to be arrested by the British and participated in the Salt Satyagraha. 2. Kutturani Chennamma, Queen of the princely state of Kuttur in Karnataka, she bravely led an army rebellion at the age of 33 in 1824. The resistance ended in her giving up her life for the nation. Sucheta Kriplani, Indian freedom fighter, who on 15th August sang the Vande Mataram in the Constituent Assembly, 1947. Sarojini Naidu was an Indian political activist and poet, a proponent of civil rights, women's emancipation, and anti-imperialistic ideas. She was an important figure in India's struggle for independence. Her works in poetry earned her the sobriquet Nightingale of India or Bharat Kokila by Mahatma Gandhi because of the color, imagery, and sheer lyrical quality of her poetry. The list goes on. Matangiri Hazra, Kanakalata Barua, Moolvati, these women had spunk and determination in the face of adversity, the courage to look death in the face, and a supreme love for their motherland, ready to give up their lives for her. The march continues, and now the Democratic Republic of India can claim with pride the presence of empowered women in all walks of life and of international repute. To name a few, in politics, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, Nirmala Sitaraman. Sports, Sania Mirza tennis, Saina Nehwal and PV Sindhu badminton, PT Usha Dudi Chand athletics, Mithali Raj Harmanpreet Kaur cricket, Geeta Karmakar gymnastics, Mary Kom boxing. Science, Kalpana Chawla space sciences, Janaki Ammal botany, Asima Chatterjee chemistry, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw pharma, and Dr. Indira Hinduja, a gynecologist who worked on human in vitro fertilization and embryo transfer. In the defense services, Lieutenant General Madhuri Kanitkar, recently she became, in 2020, the third female Lieutenant General of the Indian Armed Forces. A pediatrician by profession, she was in the Army Medical Corps. Law, we know Seema Kushwaha, who was the lawyer in Nirbhaya's case. We cannot end by not mentioning empowered women in the international arena. Right from Kamala Harris, the first woman Vice President of the United States, Angela Merkel, Chancellor Germany, Christine Lagarde, French politician, businessman and lawyer, was also the ex-chair and managing director of the International Monetary Fund. Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' wife, a philanthropist, Nancy Pelosi, a politician in the US, Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand. But my personal favorites would be Malala Yousafzai, a Pakistani activist for female education and the youngest Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 2014. A quote by Malala: "I raise my voice not so that I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot succeed if we are held back." And of course, Kamala Harris, the first African Southeast Asian woman president of the United States. Yes, indeed a woman, a bright symbol of empowerment against all odds. Brought up by a single mother of mixed parentage, rising like a phoenix in a white-dominated society and political atmosphere. Kudos to her. Overcame all the obstacles hindering the advancement of minority women, a Herculean task indeed, and shattered many a glass ceiling along the way. So, now coming to the status of Indian women in the modern world, though the Indian woman has come a long way in the modern age, she still is beleaguered with social pressures on all fronts. Even today, educational disparities still continue. Inequality of literacy rates between men and women, which, although being slowly bridged, still show a distorted ratio. For every 100 literate male, there are only 62 literate women. Increasing number of dowry deaths, about 1.4 deaths in 100,000 women, one of the categories of violence against women. Then sexual exploitation, both at home, domestic violence, at the workplace, sexual harassment, abuse of little girls in their houses by members of their own family, which is a well-guarded secret. Rape, another facet of sexual exploitation that scars the psyche of a woman if she manages to avoid death. Acid attacks on girls, usually by jilted lovers. Online harassment. Nowadays, increased activity on the internet has its own pitfalls, releasing confidential and personal data online, cyber stalking, online harassment. Then, the increased divorce rates. In recent times, we have definite evidences of increased divorce rates. The strongly educated, economically independent woman would want to exercise equal rights at home too, and would not want to tolerate any form of subjugation resulting in strong differences with her husband leading to divorce. These days, however, the stigma attached to divorced women has reduced considerably and prospects of remarriage are bright. Then the conflicting dual role, the educated working woman is both a breadwinner and a homemaker. In the workplace, she has to work doubly hard to compete with her male colleagues and outshine them. On returning home, after a hard day's work, she has to do justice to her role as a mother, a wife, and additional responsibilities of the extended family. This is what the society expects of her. So social and sexual superiority. The man thinks he is superior to a woman, either be it intellectually and physically, that it is his birthright to subjugate women. However, we should not feel dejected by the above dismal picture. This should only strengthen our resolve to make a difference in whichever way we can. We need to bring about a social transformation where the woman gains control over all the vital issues that affects her life and allow control over resources and benefits so that she becomes an important source of energy in the functioning of a society at large and the march towards the sustainable development of our country. Summing up, the process of empowerment, I repeat, the process of empowerment begins in the mind of a woman's consciousness, her psyche, from the belief in herself, the awareness of her rights equal to that of men, and her capabilities and potentials. She needs to feel safe both at home and the workplace. Even today, women are the point of endless debates, initiated, nurtured, and maintained by men. However, the scales are tipping in her favor, though still a far cry off. Today, they are not the silent halves of civilization. Ours has to be a concerted effort to break down the cultural silences which a girl child is made to follow by none other than her own mother. this is indeed a huge burden to carry all through life for no fault of us. She just happened to be born a girl child. Thank you.